Welcome, Sagittarius, to your year 2026 horoscope forecast. I'm going to share some of the big picture of the year ahead to begin with. Then on screen, your solar return right at the start of the year always provides a very influential backdrop for the following 12 months. I'm then going to go through all the key influences one by one to give you a truly clear picture of the opportunities for the year, but also the challenges, and that can help you to navigate the year ahead to the very best of your abilities. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it to continue to thrive and do so now. As we go into each year, it's very important to understand the backdrop energy, and that comes from the eclipse series, which are intrinsically linked to the nodes. So as you come into this new year, the North Node starts the year still in the part of your chart to do with drawing your attention towards your needs as an emotional being. But we also have the strict Saturn and the dreamy Neptune in that part of your chart as well. But if you go back to last September, when we had two eclipses, the second of which, a solar eclipse, was in your sector of ambition, goals, and your connection to the wider world in the practical, precise sign of Virgo. But when that eclipse occurred, it was in a very challenging opposition to Saturn. If you have got things going on, perhaps responsibilities with young family members, older family members, where you live isn't quite right for you, if there's any kind of inhibition that's going on at the root of who you are, it could in some ways prevent you from seizing a golden prize. So as you come into this new year, one of the things I would say to you, Sagittarius, if we think back to 2012 when the dreamy but elusive Neptune moved into your sector of emotion, then Saturn moved in March 2023 into the sign of Pisces, followed by the North Node. There's been a lot of push towards you being in touch with how you feel about things, but also your sense of security. But being ruled by Jupiter, one of your defaults is absolute optimism and a desire to always bounce back and go for the next opportunity in a very dynamic way. But I feel over many years that's possibly seen lots of bits and pieces of emotion not actually get sorted out. So as we go into this new year, the need to get more ease with who you are at the very root of your being is going to continue to be a very big theme, because we do have a further two lunar eclipses across the signs of Virgo, the second one and the final one on the 28th of August in Pisces. So that need to find a balance between what you feel comfortable with deep within you, but also how you connect to others professionally or in terms of your local community, any voluntary work you do, or any leadership you provide within your family. So these are going to be things that are still going to be very active in this new year, despite lots of other changes coming. Now, as you know, Neptune and Saturn made that brief sojourn into your fellow fire sign of Aries last year, and they're going back. Neptune at the end of January and Saturn in the middle of February, and they're going to come into an alliance in Aries on the 18th of February, and that's going to be very significant for your creativity, but also for potentially if you love children or you have children, or if you're someone who's got flair and talents you want to showcase, because over the next couple of years Saturn's going to push you to really work hard on these. But it's a more outgoing energy. Yes, Saturn is in its full in Aries. It's not its best location, but the fifth house and Saturn, it's not usually in a natal chart a particularly cheerful combination, but we have to work with Saturn. If we kind of just resent it, it's not going to be a success. So the more application you can show around your talent, the better it's going to be. But the intriguing thing I feel is we do have a new solar eclipse series starting on the 17th of February. And it's in Aquarius, which is great because it echoes the Pluto energy, which has been very powerful the last few years. Pluto now full-time in Aquarius through to 243, making you more conscious of your beliefs, but also how you convey those ideas, often with great power and persuasion. But that solar eclipse clashes bitterly with another planet which I think has been the source of mischief for you personally over the last 7 years, which is Uranus. You're a sign that likes a degree of spontaneity and variety. If things are too metronomic, doesn't really work for you, but everyone needs a degree of routine. And I think what's happened over the last few years is everything has felt very disrupted, and at times that's made you feel very dislocated. So if your emotional and home life have been challenging, it's been difficult to get into any kind of routine. Neither of those things have been great. And that Uranus position late in Taurus, before it switches back into your sector relating on the 26th of April, clashes in a very tense way with that new moon, or that solar eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. And the combination of those two aggravants, the two players, could create a lot of nervous tension. So the first half of this year, if you're not staying in touch with your emotional needs, you're taking on too much professionally, or you're missing out professionally because of what you're needing to attend to at home, which could create resentment. All of this can create quite a lot of hyper energy. And you may think, Patrick, when is this Uranus energy ever going to make way? But it will on the 26th of April. It's going to move into Gemini. It's going to forge an electric angle to Pluto straight away, which I think will be very helpful to you. And I'd also like to say to you that whatever you have been beavering away on, particularly in terms of your ambitions, over the last few years, Jupiter, your ruler, was challenged strongly last year, just as it moved into a part of your chart to do with long-term finances. The square that was forged with Saturn at that time in Aries, exactly on June the 15th, was really quite limiting. But in the first half of this year, if you keep working away, finances can really revive you. But I'm going to share with you another reason why I'm absolutely convinced that will be the case. So generally speaking, if you can find that midpoint between the things you need to do professionally, the things you need to look after at work, your support systems are more ordered, you can try to get a bit more of a routine going. You're recognizing that that part of you that does like sharing ideas, always gaining information, that's a big part of your nature. You've got such an inquisitive personality, it's brilliant. But there's only so many hours in the day, and maybe you're going to have to limit your access to anything which over arouses you in terms of your nervous system. So it could be quite a lot of adrenal energy, but there could be a breakthrough. It may be about where you live, it could be to do with a renovation, it could be to do with a change in the family. I feel things are shifting, but it's still part of a theme that's been ongoing, but new themes are coming in, as you can see, which are very exciting. But we have to be conscious of Mercury. Mercury starts this year in your zodiac sign for the 3rd year running, but Mercury's detrimented in Sagittarius. And one of the things with Mercury in Sagittarius is it can perhaps lack a little bit of attention to detail, which it appreciates through its rulership of Virgo, or maybe it's sort of micro view of things through Gemini, doesn't always take into account the big picture. But it does this year go, apart from starting the year in detriment and also in a very challenging angle, which I will share with you shortly on your solar return, to 3 big influential pointers. What is going to happen is that there's 3 water Mercury retrogrades this year. And being someone who does like to convey ideas, does get a sense of drama, and likes to broaden your horizons at all time. So whether it's through travel, whether it is through your interests, whether it's through your connections, Mercury goes into a retrograde late February in your sector of emotion, cross wires, real possibility. Also, of course, it can be a chance to improve communication around your emotional world. But then it's going to go into a retrograde as it goes through the sign of Cancer from June the 29th to July the 23rd. That's shared finances and resources. Jupiter is priming them up in a good way. If you're discussing a contract across those 24 days, it may require great attention to detail to make sure that something doesn't go awry. And then your 12th house, which is very, very complex, can be to do with people that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart. That's emphasised from October the 24th to the middle of November. So be aware at that time for people who may have not necessarily the best of intentions. So those Mercury retrogrades are all in water signs. So for a fire sign like you, and also a mutable sign, which can be restless, can just want to crack on and not stop and navel gaze too much, you're actually being really encouraged very, very carefully to be aware of the psychological dimension around all your conversations this year, but particularly through those 3 Mercury retrogrades. I need to tell you also about Jupiter, your ruler, because he is going to be moving at the end of June into your sister fire sign of Leo. Now, I know that Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, but the exaltation is really a reflection of its rulership at Pisces. It was the traditional ruler of that sign. Remember, Jupiter is your sole domiciliary ruler, and therefore when it makes its way through Leo, it's much more dynamic and positive for you, particularly when it goes through the second decan of that sign, because that's again amplifying your natural enthusiasm. But for you, the sign of Leo is, if you like, an echo of Sagittarius. 9th house energy and Sagittarius are not identical, but there's an echo. And it is going to bring a real sense of excitement and possibility. But it's not alone in the good news that's coming. But at the end of July, the North Node inverts back into Aquarius for the first time in 18.7 years. And as I said before, eclipses and nodes very closely tethered together. So we had the solar eclipse in Aquarius, and along comes the North Node. So with Pluto as well, remember your conversations and your thinking and your belief systems are going to be very important in the years ahead, but particularly over the next 18 months. But then we have a solar eclipse in Leo, but this one has Jupiter, your ruler in residence, but also the aforementioned Mercury. If ever there was an influence to supercharge all that's best about you, it's that. So in the second half of this year, I feel that you're going to be feeling a form that you haven't experienced for ages. Maybe since Neptune moved into the sign of Pisces, 212. It was initially there in 211. Maybe more recently with Saturn broadly over the last 2.5 years in Pisces. Not easy at all. Saturn doesn't like being in Pisces. It is about consequences and outcomes, and for you it's the emotional world. There may have been something that's got more ordered and structured, and you may be at peace, but there may have been some challenges. So I feel that this 9th house, Leo, which is warm, remember the solar system depends on the sun, which rules Leo. So it's life force, it is the luminary. It lights up the day. So with your ruler being there and being involved in the mix on that solar eclipse, that part of you that loves travel, that loves exploration, higher education, that loves journeying, that loves knowledge, anything to do with higher education, all can be lit up with possibilities in the last half of this year. It really is thrilling, and it's exciting to be able to tell you this. There are a few things to tell you about. Saturn does go into a retrograde from July the 26th through to December the 10th. So if you do meet someone new, you're going to have to work at it. And the upside of Jupiter is Jupiter goes into its annual retrograde really late this year. And that Jupiter retrograde takes place in December, and it gets to 27 degrees in Leo before it begins. So it's very expansive for you, but Venus does go into a retrograde on October the 3rd and in your 12th house. If there is a relationship where trust has been an issue, particularly with the Mercury retrograde, and it does go back into its home sign of Venus, your sector of friendships, I think there could be a little uncertainty around your romantic situation at that time, if I'm honest. But remember, the last of the Virgo Pisces eclipses, the lunar eclipse, occurs on the 28th of July, and it is in Pisces. If you've really worked at embracing the energy of the North Node, Saturn and Neptune, you know yourself much better. You're much more at ease with who you are. And also, with the help of Uranus moving into your sector of relating, you're looking for more authentic connections with people and breaking free of those that don't work. And talking of freedom, having Jupiter in your 9th house will, I feel, push you to be in touch with the part of you that can be very much a free spirit, that does like to be spontaneous, that does enjoy variety, that doesn't want to be hemmed into things that don't work for you. But I feel that what you've learned from Neptune, Saturn and the North Node in Pisces is a lot more understanding of your inner world. So this time, with this roaring energy in the second half of the year, there's so much excitement for you to go for. Now let's have a look at that solar return. But just before I go into that, I want to share with you about my unique offer. You can order your personal natal forecast for year 2026 now, and I'll give you the rest of this year free. But also you'll get 30% off the individual prices, and you'll get your life roadmap report in my special package. That really helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far, all of us. It's totally unique to each person, but understanding those patterns and matching them to the forecast will help you to make your moves in the new year much more shrewdly. But also in my special offer, you'll get your free general zodiac forecast for each of the 12 signs, but also your Chinese forecast, your Vedic forecast and your love forecast too in my special booklets. Please see the link below for more. I mentioned before that Jupiter in the first half of the year could be good for shared finances, business finances. But on the screen now, you can see that Venus, the money planet, Mars, the planet of desire, are coalesced either side, wrapping the Sun, and in the sign of Capricorn. Now, the Sun's always in Capricorn at the turn of the year, and it's always just into the second decan sub-rule by Venus, but through its rulership of Taurus, very much about sensuality, money, and appreciation of good food. Now, if you are someone who really does appreciate things like fine dining, organic food, taking care with food preparation, you're going to be playing Mind Host this year with that combination. But also this is a very potentially essential combination. So if you meet someone, even if you have to work at it with Saturn in the 5th house, or someone electrically comes into your world with Uranus's help, there's going to be lots of enjoyment, and it could be intimate enjoyment. But one of the things that will need to align is your values. So however much you're drawn to someone by their physical presence, their magnetism, how much you fancy them, I feel being aligned around values is something that's often underestimated, but that will be critically important to make that tight a success. But what I can tell you is that Capricorn energy with Mars exalted can bring a real improvement to the base income in your life all throughout this year. And I think that's going to be something that brings a lot of extra security to you. I mentioned Jupiter before. Jupiter is in a very strong link with the midpoint between the Sun and the Moon. The Moon's in your sector of relating as you start this year, the Sun in that practical second house in Capricorn, but the midpoint between them, the yin-yang of the chart, is very close to Saturn, but forges a strong link to Jupiter. So if you're in touch with how you feel, and Jupiter in the 8th house, which can be to do with your connections to others, you could benefit maybe around a property matter, maybe to do with a legacy, maybe something you've really worked hard on. There is the potential for it to improve, but just be mindful with Mercury in your own sign, that squares with the midpoint, Saturn and Neptune. There may be times, therefore, that life does feel a bit confusing this year, just being really honest. Because Mercury in your sign is that part of you that just wants to think big, act big and go for it. And those guys in Pisces are saying no, slow, no, which can create frustration. But if things don't go quite at the rattling pace you would like, think of it as potentially a good thing. In some ways, rejection can be something that keeps us safe. So just be aware of that. But Mercury does forge a challenging link to Uranus at the start of this year. So if there is something that does feel very cluttered and not running very smoothly and you're trying to resolve it, might be difficult because you might have some obligations and responsibilities even if you don't want them. So just be aware of that. But the moon forges a strong link to Pluto, suggesting that if you connect to the right people, you can make some fantastic connections this year. But I really love the fact that Mars and Venus are coalescing around the sun. As we would say in Welsh, they're cwtching the sun. So the Venus brings the warmth, Mars the dynamism. Traditional astrologers might say the sun is in some ways combusting Venus, diminishing its energy, but I think that's stunning from a modern astrology viewpoint. To put you on the front foot and also look at the position of the path of fortune, it's linking in a trine with those three players in Capricorn, but in the sign of money, your 6th house. So keep working away, keep being very enterprising, try to get the everyday routines working a bit smoother. Be aware you could suffer a little bit of stress in the first 6 months of the year, but mainly if you're scattering yourself too thinly, not prioritising. Learn or take the lessons from Saturn, Neptune and the node in your 4th house. Take those into this year. Keep staying with them, even if more dynamic, exciting energy is coming later in the year. But when it comes to communications all through this year, the more sensitive you can be to your own inner needs, but also your connections to others, the better it's going to be. Have a fabulous year, Sagittarius. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, please check out my testimonials below. But also, please go to patrickarundell.com. You can read your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, general, love and Vedic horoscopes every single day. Enjoy my fabulous 3 free card tarot and sign up for your free natal horoscope fired to your device each morning.